I guess I'd have to tell you that we'd have to start from the beginning. So Sarah's birth was anything but normal.
And I just could tell, even though Ben was coaching me and my doctor was like, yeah, you're doing great, I just knew something's not right.
What we had expected was, a child born on March 15th.
On March 15th, 2013, I had normal contractions. I was really excited because everything was progressing naturally. When my heart rate and Sarah's heart rate went up dangerously high, my doctor said, you've got to take a break, you've got to rest, and I'll come back and check on you. And then when he came back in, he checked me, he goes, nope, we're gonna have to do a C-section. I just started bawling. And Ben held my hand and he goes, I can't imagine what you're going through right now. I said this prayer to a venerable, so he's not beatified yet, but Solanus Casey. I just said, please help me, please be with me. And it was a very silent, quick prayer. I never even told Ben about it.
She was born on 3/16, and I never forget that because I always think of John 3:16.
There was what the doctor that did my C-section called a miracle, and that was just surrounding Sarah's birth. Everything that happened in the OR, everybody that was present, the medical staff that witnessed just the whole process, the whole procedure, they all said, there's somebody divine that's in this room right now.
I remember the first time that I got to see Sarah and I knew something wasn't right, but thankfully she was born full term. She had a good set of lungs because she let us know right away that she was in the room, but you could tell something wasn't quite right, and it was a very difficult day.
From the very beginning, there was this joy mingling with sorrow and uncertainty, because as soon as she was born, we knew something was wrong just because we saw her little mitten hands, her forehead, her eyes were really buggy. She looked like there was something really wrong, and we didn't know. Nobody knew.
It was difficult for everybody. It was really difficult. It suddenly put us in a whole different world because we didn't know what was going on. I mean, we had absolutely no idea. The doctors couldn't give us any answers right away, and it would be months and months before we sort of felt any sense of normalcy in our life.
It was like there was something more that God was stirring in me to bring into other people's awareness, that there's hope. And so I had to find what that hope was after we had Sarah.
I mean, really what encompasses APERT is that there are cranial plates that are fused, and then what's called syndactyly, and that's just a fancy term for fingers and toes being fused together. Now, there's a whole other array of things that could happen. There's
want a snack?
Children like Sarah who, in all respects, they look a little bit different, but they're fairly normal. They develop normally, mainly physically. I mean, you can tell with when you look at her in her face and her hands and fingers and stuff like that there's a difference. But for the most part, I mean, she's active and she's thankfully on the milder end of the syndrome.
Hi, Sarah. Can you say hi? Hi.
Ben and I are a lot like everybody else. We have good days and bad days. We have days where we really struggle to find purpose and meaning in the daily grind. And, you know, sometimes it's hard. It's hard to find that kernel of hope.
We literally have to put Sarah's life in God's hands every time she has a surgery, because even though it may seem routine, she may not come through the surgery. There could be something that happens.
That's kind of how Ben and I live, in this place of hope and yet waiting for the fulfillment of God's promises, whether it's here on earth or for certainly, you know, in the afterlife.
So it's kind of living in the moment and just kind of putting it all in God's hands and saying, all right, well, we don't always know what to do, so just help us, help guide us through this.
It wasn't really until we had Sarah that it all kind of culminated, and it made sense that it was like this theme in my life, this theme of grief, of tragedy, and yet triumph.
You can do it! Look at you, Scooty! Ewing! Come get it! Come get it! Good job, Sarah!
There are so many experiences that we have when I go out in public with Sarah to various places, usually medical facilities, things like that. And we have conversations with people that astound me.
A lot of people, um, they're almost mesmerized by Sarah's toughness and by her ability to bounce back from these tough situations.
We really need to get to know people. And the word that I like to use in my writing is encounter. So instead of, the superficial happenstance meetings that we have with people, including our own family members, because we're so plugged into our technology and we're so tied up with our busyness and our work schedules, Sarah reminds us that what's important is to encounter. In other words, we have to really sit down with another person and reach their souls like Sarah does. We have to meet who they really are, where they are, and have this dialogue where we can really grow together and become better, become more, become who we already are.
Hello, Dad. What do you want?
I wrote a blog post not long ago called Conversations in the Waiting Room. And, most of us, when we go to the doctor, we're sitting there with our magazine or our phones or whatever, our tablet. And with Sarah, it's impossible. She's so extroverted, which is a good thing. But she goes up to all these strangers and says hi. And because she looks different, it's funny how these total strangers that I've never met before and will never see again start talking to me about really important things. They almost always go straight into talking about, I don't know, a nephew or a niece that has special needs and how they really feel like children that have special needs are God's gift to the world and why they feel that way. And then they sometimes talk about life and death and the afterlife, and it's amazing. It's like Sarah just naturally brings out the depth in other people. I think that that's just an unspoken gift of someone that has a facial difference or anybody that has what the world calls a handicap or a disability. Those people just constantly remind us that we have to have this stark confrontation with ourselves.
Look at that, big girl. Look at that.
There is something striking about Sarah. I don't know. I think it's that spiritual aspect of her spiritual charism, I guess. She just has this ability to walk up to somebody and just reach into their soul. And she doesn't even know she's doing it because she's 2.
Puppet.
Being able to pull people outside of their own shell is definitely very much an awesome message, to say the least.
Sarah is very intentional because just who she is and how she lives. Sarah lives in the present moment. She draws me back to the present moment. When I'm worrying and fretting about what might happen or might not happen or what already has happened, Sarah draws me back to now. I have written more about redemptive suffering specifically. So just talking about how do we make sense of the senseless? How do we just kind of come to terms with the fact that there are some mysteries in life that will never be explained, and just how can we be okay with that? How do we get to a place of peace and just dwell within the God who is mystery? I get emails from people all over the world. Some of them are other APERT families that just say, thank you so much for this particular piece that you wrote. It's really given me a lot of strength. It's put into words something I was not able to articulate myself. It's really brought out some meaning into what I'm going through. I love following your blog because it gives me hope and purpose, and it kind of makes sense out of what I can't make sense. I certainly believe that my writing is a spiritual charism because of that, because there's so many people that tell me this is exactly what I needed to read today, or this really changed my life, or you have no idea what a blessing this was. I really feel like this was inspired by the Holy Spirit.
I'm gonna get you both.
And sometimes I've thought, well, why us? Why did my story get picked to be published? And it's not necessarily because I think that our family is special or set apart or better in some way. It's just that I think there's something specific that God wanted and intended for our family through Sarah's witness.
Reach out to people that are different, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a physical disability. It doesn't have to be some rare syndrome or genetic issue or anything like that. It could be something simple as somebody's homeless, or somebody is struggling with death in the family or some sort of pain, depression. You know, reach out to them, because if we wrap ourselves up in our own little world, then you know, it's Sarah doesn't wrap herself up in her own little world. She's social, and she says hi to everybody, and it's a lesson for us not only to say hi to them and be kind to them and charitable, but to be you know, a good neighbor.
Just invite children to say hi, to include kids that are different, and then learn about what do they have. And it's okay to come up to somebody like me or another parent that has a child with a disability and ask, is it okay if my son or daughter asks you some questions, or asks your child some questions? That's really important, is just learning about people that are different and then encountering them, because once we get to know people on a deeper level, then we don't see their differences anymore. We just see who they are, and we see the heart, and we see the soul.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. May Jesus Christ bless you.